Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, it's Paul Tyler. Welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. We've had some great guests over the last couple of weeks. Thank you, Ramsey. And we thought this week, though, we would just take the four of us and actually do something which you normally don't do until the end of the year, which is look back on predictions we made. I don't know, what was that, gentlemen? Maybe 3 months ago, maybe?
Barely.
Right? Barely. So, a little bit of truth telling and a little bit of reflection of what may lie ahead. We figured this whole pandemic gives us a chance to not only, reset how we're looking at the world, but reset some of our predictions. Of course, now looking back through the show notes that actually got cut out, I actually did predict the pandemic. No, I did not. But, Will, let's start on maybe the regulatory side. I think, we were so happy about the Secure Act, kind of where legislation was going. What were you saying the early part of the year, and what's changed?
So, a lot's changed, as we all know. But back in January, we knew this pandemic was out there, but I don't think anyone predicted the significant impact this would have on a human element, most importantly on a human element, on a sales element, and on the regulatory front. We were discussing the importance of that significant legislation, the Secure Act, and what that will do for individuals' retirements. And fast forward now to April, and people are dealing with volatility, significant losses in their 401ks, et cetera, a lot of uncertainty, and not just from their financial perspective or their financial planning, retirement planning perspective, but just in life, this uncertainty abounds. It's all around us. You can see it daily, and more amplified in certain areas, in certain geographic areas. But it's profound. So the current regulatory environment has really shifted to really take a look at how do we take care of our how do we take care of our nation, and how do we take care of people that are hurting and unemployed, and make sure that they have access to services, in addition to some protection from the financial impact that they're all experiencing, whether that's with respect to their mortgages, paying their insurance premium. We're seeing a lot of regulators asking for a certain dispensation and treatment of individuals who are highly impacted from this. And as I mentioned earlier, folks are still kind of reeling from how this is impacting them and their families, and secondarily how it's really impacting their financial planning and their retirement planning. So a lot has shifted on the regulatory front, and I think it will still develop over the next few months, and I think it's going to change the landscape going forward in ways that I don't think any of us anticipated in January.
Yeah, just sticking with the regulatory issues. Obviously, I think this has hit. The regulators have been more focused on the life insurance than the annuity side to date. We've really seen regulators, I think, step in for the public good. Both for business, commercial insurance, for life insurance. But in some regards, the state's almost rewritten. Is in the process of rewriting the contracts we have with our clients. What areas would we, where do we think we'd see regulators step in on the annuity side, if any, at this point?
Potentially if there was maybe a situation where people were paying into a systematic continued investment into an annuity. I really think that their focus has been on life insurance, but I do think that regulators, this whole pandemic has given regulators an opportunity, and I think we've seen a bit of this. So I want to focus certainly always on the consumer protection end, and we've seen a lot of that on life insurance. But on the annuity side and elsewhere, I think that regulators are starting to see the need to innovate and be able to affect certain transactions, et cetera, in ways that weren't potentially contemplated a few years ago. So what I'm referring to is the evolution of more virtual and electronic transactions on the annuity side that maybe we haven't traditionally seen. So I think that regulators are recognizing that there needs to be an openness to ensure that we're able to provide needed services, insurance services with our clients and our customers in new ways, similar to how we're dealing with this pandemic, across society. So I think on the annuity front, I think that's where I'd see it. On the life front, I think we're all aware of the extra time periods that folks are asking for, and the need to make sure that we're not underwriting decisions aren't being made in a detrimental manner to customers, et cetera.
Yeah, Mark, is it fair to say on the annuity side, the actions taken by the regulators so far have actually been fairly, I want to say, friendly towards agents and consumers trying to, get contracts issued, right? They've relaxed their rules around, I must meet in person with you and get a signature. I can actually, meet in person quote through a webcam. I mean, what's the role of the regulator in terms of a marketing and sales perspective so far?
I guess one perspective that I would see potentially happening, and you've already seen it in defined contribution plans where the government has allowed access to those funds and waiving a 10% penalty for early withdrawal, giving a longer term payback period for the taxation on it. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw that same type of liquidity components come into annuities, both qualified and non-qualified, allowing, more favorable access, from that 10% penalty and from that taxation standpoint.
Interesting. And then let's sort of talk about the prediction. I think you were very bullish on guaranteed income, right? And you were bullish on, some of the accumulation-oriented annuities. Has anything changed? Is guaranteed income something people don't want today?
No, I think actually guaranteed income is something that people are really reverting back to. If you think about when guaranteed income products really became, very popular in the marketplace on FIA specifically, that was post 2007, 2008. They had been in variable annuity products for a number of years prior to that, but the introduction to them into FIAs was around that same time frame. And at that point in time, you saw an escalation of up to about 85% of all sales on FIAs having those types of riders. And then as the bull market continued to grow, that dissipated and it started going more to accumulation featured products. Now, I also think that if you're looking at a market today that's sitting, depending on the day you're looking at it, because we're seeing 6 to 7% swings some days in the market, anywhere from 20 to 30% off of its highs, somebody going in right now can certainly view that as a good buying opportunity from an accumulation standpoint. So I think that there's two mindsets out there. There's those folks that, may have been drawing down assets from, whether it's a, systematic withdrawal structure from an annuity or from a variable based market product. And now they're revisiting that and saying, well, wait a second, if I'm down this much and I still need to take the same dollar amount out, what's the sustainability behind that? So you're starting to see a lot more folks look at the importance of guarantees, the importance of not only the income guarantees, but putting the floor on your principal. We don't know how long this economic turnaround is going to take. We don't know how long the shelter in place is going to be in effect. And the longer that goes on, the bigger challenge is going to be to come out of it. So putting a floor in place from a principal standpoint, as well as putting in lifetime guarantees. Now, the other thing that we're starting to see, and I think that's important to note, is if you asked any retiree 6 months ago what their number one concern in retirement was, it would have been the concern of outliving their money. And I think if you ask that same question today, and a perfect case in point is, people aren't leaving their homes. They're concerned. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about their well-being. They're concerned about their families. So, it's not just their financial well-being that they're concerned about. They're concerned about everything else, as it relates to life in general. And that's where, on previous episodes, we've talked about products that have multiple guarantee components in addition to principal and income guarantees, such as critical care benefits and family benefits through escalating death benefit features. And I think those products are actually going to become more popular as we move forward, because I think there's a new reality out there for people. And I think they're looking at things on a much broader perspective than they once had.
Well, interesting. So in Ramsey, macro perspective. So, I told my boss, I thought, to sell our MIGAs, maybe what we should do is start running a special, buy a MIGA and get a free barrel of oil. What do you think?
So look, I think that a few things. One, let's just go back to my prediction. My prediction, I think it was January 10th we made these, was market would probably do well again this year, kind of up 8 to 10%, and a lot of that was I felt like there was the political will to make it happen, both from the perspective of the administration as well as the Fed. Everybody was sort of very, very accommodative, and now we have this external factor that has come in, this exogenous factor of the pandemic that has changed things dramatically. So I think it's done a few things. One, I think it's changed our perspective a lot. So if you think about what we were arguing about 3 months ago, was like the Astros. Everybody was pissed off about the Astros. With respect to the Secure Act, there were a lot of people that thought it was great, but there were a lot of, there was a vocal sort of community, maybe they were a minority, but vocal community that, was upset about, the death of the stretch IRA. Nobody's talking about that at all now, right? So it's been some real perspective here. Now, when I sort of look around in the market and hear what sort of various commentators have to say, I've been struck by sort of the different messages that various people have. So if you watch CNBC, they're sort of hanging on. I find that they're hanging on sort of bated breath for every sort of uptick in the market, like it means everything's getting better. I prefer to follow, a set number of people that I think are just have a really sort of a good long-term perspective, and they're people from a variety of places. So it could be Mohammed El-Arian, who used to run PIMCO and it continues to be a senior executive at Allianz. It is Scott Minerd, who manages money for Guggenheim and a lot of other entities as well. It's Neil Kashkari, who runs the Minneapolis Fed, who used to, during the last crisis, he was Hank Paulson's right-hand man in the Treasury as they worked their way through TARP and other things. And so I continue to look at folks that have a what I consider sort of a lot of depth in terms of their perspective. And although they all have different views on different elements of the market, whether it's credit or whether it's rates or whoever, every single one of them seems to be looking at a much sort of longer term time horizon for things to stabilize. So what does that mean? That means even if tomorrow we have people coming back into work, et cetera, there's going to be some structural damage that's going to take a longer time to sort of get sorted out. So I remain hopeful, and we're starting to see some signs of loosening restrictions here in New York already, right? But I think that no matter what happens in the next few months, no matter how optimistic it looks, I think it's very important that we keep in mind that this is going to be a longer journey. So sort of dovetailing that with one's personal investments, I echo what everyone else here has said, that I think that there really should be a newfound appreciation for the role of guaranteed income in your portfolio. And to the extent that you've got guaranteed income sources that have riders or exceptions that can be utilized for health related issues, which are particularly poignant right now, I think that those can be interesting alternatives.
Oh, it's fascinating, Mark.
I was going to ask Ramsey on the macro side. Obviously, there's been a lot of stimulus pumped into the economy from the government. And there's been a lot of talk about a recovery. Is it going to be a V recovery? Is it going to take longer than that? Obviously, I think the longer it takes to get things back up and running, the less probability of a V. Like, what are your thoughts in terms of that timeline where we could come back, fast and furious in terms of economic growth?
Yeah, I don't think it's a I don't think it's a V per se. I think you might see small V's in the markets. You might see the market sort of anticipate things getting better, and you might see some spikes. I think a lot of those will be, sort of bear market bounces. One of the things one has to keep in mind is that when you shut things down, and I'm going to borrow a phrase that Muhammad al-Erani has used a lot, that you can't just turn the economy back on as if it were a switch. Right. And I think we were having a conversation in the last couple of days about what it might mean in the oil industry. Or I think we made the joke that if we're talking about like the dairy business where they're throwing a lot of milk, you can't turn cows on and off.
Right.
very, very easily, right? So I think that the friction around getting things started up again is something that is underappreciated, but it's also relatively unknowable right now. So we don't really know, what it means. What does it mean if the stock market comes back, but there are people that had to actually sell their stocks so they could pay the rent? Well, they're not in the same position that they were before, or if their job doesn't come back. So all the stimulus, I would think of it less as stimulus and more as a matter of sort of like filling a vacuum, right? What they're doing, it really is filling a vacuum that's left by this economic paralysis that we've had to enter. And that's not the same as, hey, we have a slow economy, we're going to try and boost it. We're actually sort of filling a gap. Right. So I don't think of it as a stimulus per se. I think of it as more of a rescue package.
Yeah, that seems like certainly a better description of it. And I guess if that vacuum can be, filled to the extent that, that the timeline carries on for, and the markets or the economy opens back up again, people's behavior is going to be somewhat dictating of that, right? How willing are people going to be to go back out again and go back to restaurants, go back to stores? And it's kind of two sides of that. I mean, you have people that are really cooped up that you'll think that you want to get out. You want to get out and start living a normal life again. But then there's obviously the concern. So I think that how the reaction is from that standpoint, if people come back out in full force, things could turn back on pretty quickly. And if that void was filled in that gap, do you feel we could almost pick up where we left off in some respect?
So let's say that like tomorrow, all bets, things are loosen up such that maybe you can go back to work, maybe you can more easily go to the park, etc. Are you getting on a cruise ship? I don't know, maybe not yet. Are you going to get on a plane very quickly? Like, how soon is it going to be before you get on a plane again? How soon is it going to be before you go to a conference? You've probably, many of us will have discovered the power of this particular medium, which is Zoom. Like, think about how many people 2 months ago had no idea what Zoom was. Now every man, woman, and child in the country knows how to use it. And we don't want to keep doing Zoom cocktail parties all the time. So we'll probably go out and have drinks with friends. But I just think that there are some elements of the way we do business, again, including in-person meetings. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of in-person meetings. I think that they're fantastic. I just think that I think we're going to see less of them. And think about like the economic impact of us sitting here having this call versus, all of us getting in a cab, going to the airport, right? Buying a meal at the airport, getting on the plane, getting in a cab on the other side, staying in a hotel, all that. Like, if we take all that out of like our business process, I mean, that's actually, those are real sort of like, those are real business impacts that I think may take a little bit longer to recover.
Well, and I think Adam Holt, I think had a phenomenal frame of mind around this, which is
remind us who Adam is and which episode he was on.
Let's see. He was 2 episodes back, and Adam is a CEO of Asset Map. Again, terrific contact for us, Ramsey, you brought here. But his perspective of, if you adopt Zoom and you do this virtual type of meeting, can you deliver better experience for a client or better service than if you were, meeting them in person? I don't know. I think the question, and I know we're right at the end, at the top of our time here, but if I'm an agent, kind of 2 paths I can take, right? I can say, you know what, this is a big tornado. This is a monstrous tornado coming across our economic landscape, and I should run into the root cellar, pull the cover over my head and listen, drink my entire stock of whiskey while I'm and come out the same way I was before, or to some of the discussion points we've had, is it a time to really think hard and really kind of reinvent your business? Mark, I bet it's pretty, and I'm going to say I bet this because I actually have some data from our surveys we've done from our agents. I bet it's split about 50-50, or maybe even more like 70-30. I'll keep doing what I'm going to do. How long does this have to go on before agents say, you know what, I really need to change what I'm doing?
Well, I think it really depends on what the client need is. I mean, in terms of whether it's guarantees, whether it's upside opportunity in the marketplace. I mean, I think that there's going to be individuals that are on both sides of that dynamic. Going back even to Ramsey's point, as it relates to how willing are we going to be able to go back onto a plane or a cruise ship, or the hotels that get impacted because we're doing this. So those industries are going to get hurt. Industries that might benefit are, we don't have the expense accounts in terms of, getting into that cab, going to that meeting facility. So certain corporations might have, less expenditures. I know as an individual, I'm spending less money right now, in the shelter in place because I'm not going out. So, at the same time, so there will be I think a major shift in terms of where corporate profitability is. But I also think the same thing will hold true with individuals. So I think individuals are going to have different perspectives and different needs. I think that's the important underlying dynamic that agents need to figure out.
Yeah. Hey, Will, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, I actually, I think that all the comments here have been spot on. And I just want to echo something that you mentioned, Paul. I really think that regardless of the industry, whether it's insurance or financial services, we're witnessing across the board entrepreneurs in whatever industry they're in having to adapt and doing, whether it's I think I mentioned at a prior episode, my wife can take Bikram yoga out of our house on Zoom. We're having a virtual barber, or not virtual barber, but a traveling barber come to our house. If we're comfortable with that. Folks are having to figure out how to and I don't want to sound blunt, but how to sink or swim, and how to adapt in this environment, in a very challenging environment when folks, minds and emotions and everything are with people that are really ill. And so I think this dynamic and this backdrop, and if it continues, I think that those of you in New York know that the esteemed governor of New York, I think, reported last night that he may close beaches for the summer. So I don't think that we're going to flip a switch and be back into the the swing of things and back at the ballpark right away. So I think it's going to take some time, and I think everyone is going to have to get comfortable re-entering into the manner in which we were kind of operating, or it may not look the same. So and I think we'll see more regulatory developments. I think we'll see more initiatives and regulators taking a look at ways in which they can, ultimately protect consumers and make sure that that to the extent we can, minimize the kind of the rocky road that folks are facing. So I think a lot more to come. I think, we're going to continue this theme and kind of continue to monitor what's going on over the next couple of months. And I think from there on out, I think there'll be a little bit of a long road ahead.
I'll tell you what, you got to be pretty brave having the traveling barber come out with 6-foot scissors.
We want to see this is the before. We'll see next week. We'll see the after. See how that whole experiment worked.
We'll see.
Yeah. So, Mark, Ramsey, final thoughts?
Yeah, just one last thing. So next week we are very excited to host on our podcast Wade Pfau. He is one of the most important academic voices in the guaranteed income space. And I mean, I'll just highlight that, in fact, guaranteed income has enormous support in the academic space, and including a lot of Nobel laureates. So it's great to have one of the leading lights join us next week, and we hope that we get lots of listeners to listen in.
Excellent. This is going to be a great show. Mark, guess you'll get the last word.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that episode coming up. I thought this was a great recap on things. It's very interesting to see, how quickly things can change in the course of a quarter, from our predictions earlier on this year. So, an ever-changing world we live in.
All right. Listen, thanks, and tune in again next week for a very interesting episode of That Annuity Show.
Hey, take care all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.